We're starting big this morning. It concerns our economy. It concerns you and I. The crude oil sector, well, it's like the lifeblood, really, of Nigeria. And it's important for us to keep a close watch on that sector. Yes, other sectors are important, but the crude oil sector, well, it's had its own fair share of controversy in the past few decades of Nigeria's life. So let's get down into the creeks, into the rigs, into the waterways, into all of those areas where the action happens this morning and bring the conversation to you. We're joined on the program by Captain Waredi Eniso, who's the Executive Director, Operations and Technical, Tantita Security Services Nigeria Limited, joins us virtually on the show this morning. Welcome, Captain, to the morning brief.
Good morning. You're welcome.
Well, the sheer size amount of pilfering in the crude oil sector is shocking. You see this firsthand, so I imagine that you're not shocked by these things. But for the average Nigerian, you see almost 5 trillion naira lost to crude oil theft in just 5 years. That's about 1 trillion naira yearly. Earlier this year, we had over 100 crude oil thefts cases in barely a week. Goodness me. So when the average Nigerian sees that, it's really hard to imagine the scale of things, because they're like, come on, how hard is it to secure that sector? But you are on the front lines, so to speak. I'd like you to just give us an introductory, opener of sorts into that sector, the theft that goes on, and what you have experienced trying to secure that sector, or that area in this case.
First and foremost, I'll share with you the fact that most of these thefts, especially the large-scale ones, are not being done by little people. They're well-connected people, different layers of society. And why you're seeing also the more or less high figures in recent times is because the country's decided to pay attention to it. Before now, there wasn't much attention, so it's not that it wasn't going. Because if you remember very well, production dropped drastically to about 200,000 barrels a day. And that brought the new architecture, which NNPC decided to take a very, very firm action. The federal government did. So you could see that you're seeing thefts of 100 or so in a week, or as you put it, but we are producing more than what was produced back then, where these reports were not made. But having said that, every drop of detail in the country is worth it because of the economy. And so we're not going to take chances. It's a very, very big problem. As you said, well, it may not be shocking some of us who are in the forefront of all of these, but yes, they're really mind-boggling.
So you said that these activities are not carried out by small people, so to speak. They are well-connected people, well-equipped, well-funded, and the rest. We've just had a conversation about, government uncovering, or at least putting out the names and list of those who are financing terrorism. It's been a conversation that has been on for quite some time. But because it's almost like terrorism, in fact, it is terrorism for those who are stealing crude. So in terms of then uncovering, unveiling those who are responsible, how well would you say we have done? Because the conversation is always around ensuring that there are consequences for wrongdoing, and that should serve as an example to others. How well have we done in that line, make people, showcase them as consequence for wrongdoing?
A couple of things you have to note, too, is that, we decided to take a very, very different turn in this. And one of the different turns is to go after kingpins. So in recent times, we worked hard with the security forces. I would like to use this opportunity to commend the Inspector General of Police Office, who dedicated a special squad. As you know, the private security companies don't have the power of prosecution. Our gallant military also do not have the power of prosecution. Under the police and the civil defense have got powers of prosecution. And the Inspector General of Police was very, very swift in setting up a special team that came up and said, okay, henceforth, we're going to drill down to every person that is involved in the case of oil theft, and such you saw in the case of the MT Cali. And the MT Harbor Spirit is ongoing. So the case of the MT Cali, the operators of that company were apprehended, and they're currently in court in Abuja. So it's not been an easy one. It's all over the media. If you check very hard, you see out there. They're there. Even the newsprint are there. So you see the actions the government is taking.
Captain, I want us to maybe elevate the conversation a little bit more in terms of, Kayode had mentioned it and you had also said it in passing, but let's do a bit of referencing. I believe, and a lot of people believe, that the level of theft, it's industrial, which is why you have mentioned that people in the high places are involved in all of this. But there were accusations of a string of culprits, allegedly, from those that are in law enforcement to people in communities to businessmen to people in government. Without necessarily mentioning names, who do you think in these categories of people that are really driving these excesses, and why can't they be stopped?
Well, as you rightly put it, there is high-level involvement by the communities also, because most of these pipelines pass through communities. And by virtue of the socio-economic problems that they face, they have no choice than to go to these lines. That is number one. Number two, there's a high level of foreign involvement also. As you know, ships do come close to the coast and are able to entice some of the communities to ensure that they get their steady oil, or if not steady enough, but through the creeks and pass the oil to them. There's also the scale of ships going directly to the oil platforms to go and help themselves directly. It's a tough one, but having said that, yes, in every situation you will find you're not going to be able to 100%, if you ask me, say that there is no complicity from people who we probably must have rested our trust on to guard the ocean. But as I said, in the recent times, these things are being looked into seriously, which is also the reason why you are finding a lot of high figures coming up, because the military also is working very, very hard currently with the private security companies to ensure that there is a cleansing system, not just on the private security companies as well, even within their own systems, to ensure that this whole problem is brought to book. So you're correct, no doubt. At high level, yes, high level involvement is there. Security forces, but note something which may also come to fore. Because, you know, the security apparatus in the country, a lot of people take advantage of it too. I mean, we've seen situations whereby even people dressing top-level security uniforms to deceive the public that, yes, you don't have any problems. This is myself. This is my rank. I'll be able to pull this deal through. So our eyes are open to ensure that everybody participating in stemming this problem is under a self-cleansing system.
So the President and Commander-in-Chief is the Minister of Petroleum Resources. How much of an encouragement are you getting that is giving you, I mean, those of you that have been contracted, to make sure you do this job? Because this is our Commonwealth being stolen. And we've seen situations where there's been a back and forth between the private entities and our established security forces over who did what, accusations, and all of that. So at the end of the day, how much push does the presidency give to make sure that, look, guys, we gave you a job to do, we need this job done because we're losing money?
Yeah, in recent times, the president has held meetings with the security forces, and he's giving them quite a fair bit of marching orders to ensure that this problem is brought under control. And ever since, to the best of our knowledge, they've been doing very, very well. In fact, the Chief of Naval Staff did inaugurate special forces that we're going to board ships together. So that's insane. If you look at it, even in the last apprehension of the vessel called Sweet Mary, which is owned by Ghanaians and came to Nigerian waters to seal, the Navy was very, very swift, in carrying out their mandate in the apprehension of that ship. And not only did they stop there, they also invited all concerned, all the stakeholders to come in, take samples. If prosecution is necessary, yes, go ahead with the prosecution. So that is the level of support we are getting. Equipment-wise, yes, they've also made it very easy for us to bring in equipment that is going to make it very, very possible for us to carry out preventive actions instead of actions of arresting people, because arresting people doesn't pay us. The best to do is to prevent people. So going forward, we've been giving that particular support to ensure that whatever it takes to prevent anybody from doing this should be brought in and should be made effective. So it's quite a high level support we are getting. So you can also see the adverts, the jingles going on. NNPC sending out weekly reports, which I believe is where you're getting all your data from. So the transparency is there. The public awareness is also there. We've got a 24/7 number that people could call, and we've been inundated with calls. The NNPC also has got a rewarding system whereby if you call them, you know anything about it, you get a reward. We also have a similar situation on ground where people call us, and if we've got a credible intelligence that yes, this is happening, we reward them. So there's quite a fair bit going on.
Well, besides the support that you're getting from the presidency, I'm wondering what support you're also getting from the National Assembly, and how that is translating also to a reduction in crude oil theft. And at this point, suffice it to say that in February, Nigeria's crude oil output has dropped yet again by about another 100,000 barrels. Speaking of what the National Assembly is doing, let's look at the approach, really, of the Navy as, they, in conjunction with your organization, continue to tackle crude oil theft. The approach in scrutiny, under scrutiny here, is the destruction of vessels, when they are arrested for crude oil theft. MV Cecilia arrested with 350,000 liters of stolen automated gas, was destroyed by the Nigerian Navy in August 2023. Another marine vessel, MV Ufoma, arrested with 20,000 liters of illegally refined crude, was destroyed by Operation Delta Safe, also in 2023. And some would say that the destruction of vessel is destruction of evidence, and as such is a collusion of the theft of crude oil as well. What are your thoughts as an organization that is at work at sea, that is trying to combat crude oil theft? What are your thoughts about this approach of destruction of evidence? Where does it lead us in terms of checking crude oil theft and arresting those who should be found culpable of this categorized as treasonable felony?
Nobody is going to be very, very happy about the destruction of evidence. But however, one of the problems you will always find is that ships are not small assets. The moment they are apprehended, the owners, the first thing they try to do is to leave the country. So you're now left with the evidence. You don't have anybody to hold. The evidence is contained oil. The oil will not stay within that metal for too long because it's sitting in one place, and it could pollute the environment. You could go take a look the way the Niger Delta was before now. It was a very, very big problem. So I guess based on that, and by virtue of the fact also that investigations and then the legal process will take quite a bit of a while. And as you know, oil won't just stay there forever the way it is. There'll be a whole lot of problems. And guarding it is expensive. You'll find the whole military guarding oil for the rest of their lives, till the whole court processes take place. So it was a tough one. But however, in recent times, because of the awareness, if you look at it, the level of destruction of such evidence is really being brought down, which is why the court approach has been taken. So, and it's yielding results. So let's see how it goes. As I said, it's not in the best interest of anybody to destroy It's just because we caught between the devil and the sea. So that was a problem, I believe, for everybody. So that was a major issue, and I think it's been addressed seriously. And one more thing, the policy of keeping such evidence needs to be reviewed, so that they don't overwhelm the organization that is keeping the evidence.
So don't you think the National Assembly, in oversighting activities in that sector, speaking of which, it's carrying out a number of investigations that has led, to very little outcomes. Don't you think the National Assembly should be more categorical in its position about the destruction of crude oil theft?
Yeah, if you remember very well, earlier this year, or so if I'm not mistaken, or sometime late last year, the members of the National Assembly, some members visited some of these vessels that were being apprehended. So that tells you the level of interest that they also have picked up in this. There are also recommendations for special courts to address this problem. So I believe with time, yes, they are going to come up with laws that are going to have special courts with special dispensation to swiftly act and bring out the necessary outcomes. So if somebody is found guilty, well, face the law the way it is, that if you're not found guilty by virtue of the fact that the evidence is not strong enough, set you free. So they are really working on the background heavily. And in order to appreciate the situation and be able to work out really ways of going about this, the whole entourage visited the region where a lot of these assets, these evidence, were being kept. And they were quite overwhelmed. So that has been very, very helpful. Not only did they visit those places, they've also visited and had meetings with the security agencies and forces that are behind the apprehension of a lot of the criminals. So a lot is going on the background, quite a fair bit.
Obviously, that sector is not for the faint-hearted. What you have to combat, so different levels, different dimensions. Aside the obvious players, the big players, the small players as well, there's also the community dimension, which we have talked about. And what just comes to mind naturally is what we saw play out in Delta State. There are different angles to it. There's a lot of work to be done in terms of investigations and the rest. But something that caught the attention of a lot of Nigerians is what the president of the Senate said about the possibility of mercenaries being responsible for this. You know that area quite well. This is where you have worked time and again. From the air, from the sea, your experience is quite robust. And I just want to know, during the course of your work, how much have you come across mercenaries, foreigners, people who are outside players that are actively involved in this one? Just how rampant is it?
Well, it is quite shocking what you will find. But when you look at the region, when it comes to the community, it is not easy to have the nation's resource pass through their communities, and then at the end of the day, they don't even see the value of what is passing through their community. So they decide to, settle for it and have their own share, especially when this is what runs in the veins of the country's bloodline of the country. So one of the things we had to do first was to make sure that we address their socio-economic systems so that they don't go for the pipelines. That was the way that we had to stem the community issues. We have quite a fair bit of layers, especially in some communities where these things are very strong. We make sure that their able-bodied youths are employed with us gainfully. Their wives, those who are married, so being given stipends to ensure that they have no reason to struggle while their spouses are out there working. And then older people also who are within the communities to give us intelligence in case, strange people come into their communities and they find some unholy discussions or unholy negotiations that are going on. So they give us information. So that's a community aspect. But however, Nigeria's crude is the best crude oil in the world. It's very, very merciful on refineries, very refinery friendly. So if you pump Nigerian crude into your refinery, you can be rest assured that the maintenance cost or an operational cost of your refinery is very, very low. So this problem is going to continue, and these foreigners keep coming in to come and entice a lot of our people. And it's about who sometimes pays better. So that's why before we started this whole thing, we looked at how much some of these people get paid. We had to triple what they were paid to ensure that whoever comes to give them anything, it's not what we pay them. So those are some of the measures we've taken. But however, it is not easy because of the conditions that I just mentioned earlier, that the Nigerian crude oil is the sweetest crude oil in the world. So we pay, they pay more. We pay, so it's about matching them dollar for dollar. But I believe at one point, whether they like it or not, they're going to give up, especially with the seriousness with which the security forces are taking this thing now, and also the prosecution methods that are going on. Without revealing much, it will interest you to know that some foreigners we haven't pegged within the country, they've absconded, and we're not stopping them. So that is going on. So it's a very, very big problem. But as I said, they're not going to stop, because Nigeria's stolen crude runs quite a lot of economies around the world. And those governments cannot say they don't know what is going on. They know what is going on, but they just want to be silent on it because it helps douse the social restiveness in their countries. So they would prefer people come here to sabotage our economy. So it's left for us to do the right thing.
So when you say they pay, we pay, and all of that, I'm thinking there is a buffer in the PIA. How is that helping in any way, shape, or form? Because some monies are supposed to be accruable to some of these oil-bearing communities, according to the PIA. I think it's between 2 to 3% or so, after the argument about whether it should be 10 or 5. Are you seeing anything that's in terms of the legislation, extant laws we put in place to make sure that there's something on the table for everybody? Is really getting to the table of these communities to counterbalance whatever is being presented to them besides what you guys are doing?
We're not too sure about that. Personally, I'm not very, very sure about the efficacy of that policy. But however, it's a good one. So we've been able to use it to advise the communities that, look, if your area produces more, by virtue of the percentage declaration in the PIA, you're going to get more. So, but I think there's some policy there to inaugurate committees or so that are going to responsible for working with the authorities in the disbursement of those things. So we're not involved in those things. So we're not too sure what is going on. But what we want to do as a private security firm is to assume that much of that does not exist and do our best to ensure that people are trained, because sometimes the issues you find is that quite a fair bit of them don't really have skills to go elsewhere or anywhere to do anything. Even as we speak, we have got some community people that we give quite a fair bit of training, ranging from drone training to other things which they could use to better their lives once they decide to leave us. So yes, those are some of the things we could do on our own side as a corporate organization to ensure that people's socio-economic needs, both now and in the future, are addressed. And I think if they are very confident that there's a future for them, they probably will leave the pipelines alone.
Now, I'd like us to explore another part of the conversation, which is, pretty much the commentary that is dominating the approach of the country to tackling crude oil theft, one of which is, the approval of, by FEC, Federal Executive Council, during the last administration for the purchase of a security tracking device, the technology that is deployed all over the world to tracking crude oil theft, but which never really saw the light of day, and billions of naira was approved. And then the employment of a private security firm, yours, it really is an indictment on the Nigerian Navy, which is saddled with the responsibility of ensuring security on Nigeria's waterways, i.e. security of critical assets such as crude oil. I wonder what your thoughts are about this part of the commentary.
If you look around the world, especially the most successful countries, you would have discovered that government is almost the same everywhere. There's bureaucracy. There are levels you want to share information. There are levels of permission you need to be able to do this and to do that. So, and Nigeria is not an exception to that. But it is this bureaucracy that a lot of the criminals do exploit. So, and there is nowhere in the world, you can go check the statistics, that any country's military or government security forces is more than the private security organizations. You could check even places like Israel. It's very effective because of the private sector. The good thing about the private sector is that we know no bureaucracy, just as the criminals know no bureaucracy. So we match them dollar for dollar. We don't know any bureaucracy. If, as I sit here now and I get information that is very, very credible, I don't need to wait for my commander or somebody to give me instructions before I go after, because all it takes, the commander, if I may put it this way, may be very, very busy and I may not be able to get to the person. So the way we operate in the private sector is that the moment we get information, we act swiftly. We've got the budget to do so. We've got the bottomless pit of finance to go after anybody we have to go to. So it's a very, very different setup. And all around the world, you find this private sector backing up the government sector. So Nigeria is going through that particular phase of recognizing the ability of or the capacity of the private sector to be able to give the government sector that necessary support to be able to do things. I mean, I could go around in my clothes as you find me and sit in a restaurant without anybody being worried that I'm a problem, and they could discuss freely. Discuss freely about how they want to do damage. But if you're in uniform all the time, people may not talk. If they know that you are dealing with them, if you have too many friends in the military, they may not talk to you. So all these issues are there. So sometimes, as I keep telling people, an aeroplane is only as good as the pilot. So if the pilots are ineffective by virtue of the fact that they tie their hands behind their back with some level of bureaucracy or something, the aeroplanes won't take off. And I think that's the issue that is playing out sometimes.
Well, as we wind down, quite an interesting conversation, really, and I hope a lot of Nigerians have been able to get some insight into the operations. 48 billion naira yearly, I think that's the cost of the contract. That's like 4 billion naira per month. On the one hand, there are people asking, are we getting value for that amount of money in terms of the output now, even though we've seen fluctuations from time to time? So are we really getting value for money on the one hand? Some others say, well, it's a job for boys. It's meant to also handle the situation around the restiveness in the region, which makes sense to a lot of people. Some others, they say, is this sustainable? What happens when we've resolved the challenges around the crude oil sector and there perhaps is no need for a contract anymore? Aren't we going to go back to square one, where we have restiveness and the rest in that region? It's a double-edged or triple-edged question, but you're captain, and I imagine that you're up to the task.
So do you realize Nigeria's crude oil is sold on dollars, yeah? So how much is 48 billion naira, if that is actually what we get, right? How much is 48 billion naira compared to what the country is going to make? If my figures are correct, I think in the last year or so, within the 9th month or 10th month of operation, Nigeria was able to save about $8-point-something billion. From how much is the contract? So that is what we face. I think probably Nigerians don't really know much about these figures. So if you know the high level of knowledge, those who make the decision to get this contract out there you will understand very, very well that they made a very, very fair decision. They won't just sell the country to us or anything like that. You know, as you said, crude oil is a lifeline. So 48 billion that you mentioned is really nothing compared to what the country is making. And mind you, the sector, you know, is coming up again, not just because of the loss of the theft. If you remember vividly, quite a lot of the investors were not interested in the sector because of the insecurity. They were not just interested. But now they're coming back up. They are planning to invest more in the sector again. So you're going to see more progress as we get the necessary support to be able to deal with this problem and bring it under a reasonable control. I know we can't eliminate it, but it's controlled.
There was a time it was a bit of an issue. We're referencing job for the boys, as sometimes they will call it. There's a bit of an issue as to your operations spreading beyond places, say, Delta, to places like the rivers and all of that. Has that been permanently resolved? Because the argument then was, if you're going to give security of a facility, national assets to the people within the region, let it be for the people within that particular locality. So the people in Bayelsa are familiar with their waters, the people in Delta are familiar with their waters, the people in rivers and people in Akwa Ibom are familiar with their waters, and everybody's trying to want a piece of the pie, one form or the other. Is that still an issue? Has it been resolved? What was put on the table for us to, you know, have the peace that we seem to have?
It was not supposed to be an issue from the get-go. The pipelines are spread across the country, as you can see, and the contract is a performance contract. Performance in the sense that we must meet certain targets before we get paid. So, and that was why it was done that way, instead of just this whole sharing formula you're talking about. But however, note something which probably the public doesn't seem to know. There is no community where the pipelines are passed that the coordinators of the lines in that area does not come from their community. I'll repeat myself. No community, whether you go to Imo State, the fellows that are working to protect the pipelines are Imolites, if I put it this way. If it is Rivers, the people that are working to protect the pipelines are from River State. There is no person from Delta State that is a coordinator in Akwa Ibom, or a coordinator in Rivers, or a coordinator in Imo. Deltans will be coordinators in Delta, Rivers, coordinators, Rivers, Akwa Ibom, Akwa Ibomites for Akwa Ibom. That is exactly the way it is. You know. So if somebody comes out, they may just be individuals, you know, maybe, but if they drill deep down, they will find out that every employee under the contract comes from their region. So even if they get it, the same people they're going to go for. And we just didn't go for them because they are community people. No, we went for them because we felt they're competent enough from that particular area. So that's the second criteria. So it's not because you put up your hands and then you get recognized or you get called to the dining table or something. No, you must be able to show capacity. So those taken from their regions are people who show capacity. But also note that you're going to have people who are going to continue to scream, people who will shout, especially when you go out there to try and take meat from a dog's teeth and don't expect a bite. I think it's a very, very unusual assumption. So sometimes these bites come out of the fact that some people's mainstay and business in the sector are being disrupted.
Back to the matter of the approach to tackling crude oil theft. For me, that's critical because there should be a lot of leads that should take the authorities somewhere in terms of finding out those who are really involved in stealing our national assets. We know that your security firm, has had run-ins with men of the Nigerian Navy aboard vessels arrested for crude oil theft. Where does all of that lead? Is it always a matter of a battle of supremacy over whose right it is to take credit for the vessel that has been arrested, or there's a lot more involved in the arrest of these vessels that Nigerians should know about, that they're not being told?
Well, I guess in any situation where there is an obtrusion of a new type of approach comes in, there will always be misunderstandings. There will also be lack of trust and things like that. If you look at things very well, in recent times when the Chief of Naval Staff had to put his foot down on the forces coming together to come and solve this problem, we haven't heard much of that at the moment. Even as far back as, New York, there was a particular point in time in the olden times where even the firefighters and the police were fighting for jurisdiction. But now everything is leveled out. So, they're always there. It's not about who is going to take credit or something. We're all working together for the same purpose, common objective. So it wasn't very easy for us to suddenly become relatives in the initial stage, but it's an ongoing relationship. You understand, as you know, the Navy is a security arm, a total security arm. So there's always going to be that situation whereby they have a right to know first in all of it. So, and actually, to some extent, yes, I agree with them because they are the custodians and they're responsible. But by virtue of the fact that we have a performance contract, which means Nigeria must have a certain amount of export level and sanity in the system to attract not only the export, but also investors to come in. Right. We don't want on our eyes and say, well, look, this area is not our jurisdiction or something. But there is now a new task force that will work with and come together to be able to sort out these issues. So that's very effective, so to speak.
Well, Captain Waredi Eniso, you have such an impressive CV, ex-ship captain, ex-airline jet pilot, former lecturer. You were in NIMASA. Thank you so much for your time on the Morning Brief.
Thank you.
There you have it. At least we've given you some insight into the operations in Nigeria's crude oil sector. But we'll shift gears now. Yes, there's a lot to talk about. We'll talk about another angle, empowering young Nigerians. Yeah, you don't want to miss this. So stay with us. See you on the Morning Brief.